Kia ora everybody, welcome to Southside Korero. I am guest hosting today along with Ja. So my name's Will, and I'm normally behind the scenes, but I'm on camera today, which is awesome. So I'm joined by Ja. Hello Ja, how are you?
Kia ora, I'm good.
Apulu, thank you so much for joining us today in this discussion.
Kia ora koutou. To everyone that might be listening in, and thank you for the opportunity to just to have a kōrero and tala noa about what's actually happening in our communities today. So thank you to you both.
Absolutely. I have a first question, if you're all right, Ja, with me jumping in. Apulu, can you just kind of frame up a little bit for us, I guess, the community work you do, but also who are you as a person? You do a lot of behind the scenes for our community, and we just want to acknowledge you today. So would you be able just to start with, I guess, your role, and then we might ask a couple of questions about, going back in time a little bit.
Cool, no worries. Yep, so my name is Apulu Reece, as I said. Apulu is a Samoan title that I've received on behalf of my family, but I'm the chair of the Otara Papatoetoe local board. So most people might just know me as Reece, but I do humbly hold other titles and roles, but I really kind of take on these leadership roles with humbleness, because as Samoans we're taught to serve, and so this is my way of trying to serve. I've only just become the chair of the Otara Papatoetoe local board since earlier this year, probably May, I think. So the electoral term is 3 years, and then halfway through this term I swapped over with Lotu Fuli. So she had been the previous chair for the last term plus the first half of this term, and so there are quite a few local boards where we're trying to share the leadership, where we have half terms, and we're one of those local boards. I'm the youngest on the Otara Papatoetoe local board. A lot of people that get into politics are usually in their older ages because they usually have the time to do that. Most of us young people are probably trying to pay the bills and look after kids, and so I'm fortunate enough that I was able to put my hand up and be elected. But again, I'm almost 40, sad to say. So I'm not that young. I'm not that young either. So there's a whole cohort of people, young people in our community that are not represented, where it's just a lot of elected people are from the older age bracket. So hopefully I can bring some sort of youth voice compared to the others, but there's a whole lot of other expertise and experience around our local board table that we all draw on to try and represent our people. Before I jumped into the local board, I'm currently still on the DHB, the District Health Board, Counties Manukau, another elected position, and this is my third term there. So those are probably the two elected positions I have. But again, before that, there's board of trustees and little trusts here and there, and community groups, churches, and family stuff. So I guess that's the nature of us, is that we try and help where we can, and if we're called to try to put our hand up, then we do it with a humbleness and knowing that we're representing our families and community when we do so. Bit of a long introduction, but hopefully that at least explains the elected roles that I hold.
Were you born and raised in Aotearoa?
Yep, born in Middlemore. I've lived in South Auckland my whole life, all over South Auckland, Mangere, Papatoetoe, Manurewa, and of course Otara. My family used to live on Kuru, and I've got family all over Otara, so really love I love South Auckland, and I'm sure there were many opportunities where we could have moved out of South Auckland and gone to Aussie, where all the cousins are. But our hearts for South Auckland. My siblings, we all still live in South Auckland.
What did you want to be growing up? If we just jump back a little bit.
I actually wanted to be a teacher. But you know what these lockdowns have taught me was that my 11-year-old self, when I said I wanted to be a teacher, no, I was never to be cut out to be a teacher, man. I feel sorry for my sons. I've got two boys, 8 and 9-year-olds, and I just when I try and teach them stuff, I'm like, oh man, I'm so old school. I'm not fit to be a teacher. But yeah, definitely, when I was younger, I wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, these positions that you are in now that kind of guide through the leadership roles. What was your way into that? You know, so you talked about the kind of teaching, and you know, maybe there's this idea of influence or serving. Was that something that you had from young, as you were growing up, that you just kind of found your way in, or was there people who played roles into helping you into the positions you're in today?
Definitely people along the way, and I guess in the end, I didn't go to teachers college or anything like that, and I went to law school, and so I finished law school and then started off at one of the top law firms in New Zealand. There were about 200 lawyers, and myself and two other girls, friends from a law school, Samoan and a Tongan. We were so three of us, 3 islanders. We were number 2, 3, and 4 islanders in a firm of 200. There was only one other islander lawyer in that whole firm, law firm, before us. So we totaled 4 that whole time I was there. So I think going into law was about definitely about trying to use the gifts that I seem to have strengths in the English and the art sort of thing. I was not good at maths. Science was out of the door for me, and so I was pretty good at writing essays and talking. So that's where my career path kind of went down. But it also opened a lot of doors, and so that law firm really taught me how the other side works, and so we had big clients. We had the big companies and international companies as our clients, and they would pay mega bucks for us to do all these cases, to defend them, to give them legal advice, and that really enabled me to understand how the system works as well. But it also kind of challenged me. There was a point in about my 3rd year at that law firm when I was asked to do long hours. That's natural in a law firm. You're expected as a junior to do long hours, but they at the time, one of the partners asked me to come in during the weekend to do some work for one of the companies that employed cleaners at a hospital, and at Middlemore Hospital. And so I was on the train on Saturday going into town, into the city to do, help do the over hours, the work that was needed to be done. And the train stopped at Middlemore station, and outside Middlemore Hospital were the cleaners protesting. And I looked at the faces and I was like, those are my family. Those are my aunties and uncles, and these are the people I go to church with. And it really challenged me. And I was thinking, man, am I really serving our people in this way? If I'm going into town to screw the people over that look like me outside the hospital, it really challenged me. And so from that point onwards, I kind of felt like I needed to learn as much as I could while I was there, and then get out. And then once the opportunity came, wherever it might come, that I use the skills and experiences that I've gained in those law firms to serve our community. And so I really feel like that background. I did a few other law firms. I was at another law firm just in Manukau, Māori law firm that did a lot of Waitangi tribunal cases, and that was the most enjoyable time of my career, my law career. I know the big law firms were nice and flash. They had like these their own floor with bar staff and restaurants and all that sort of stuff, and they had mean as parties. But man, when I was at the Māori law firm, there was one kuya that one of our clients up north, she would give me fresh fish and kumara to bring home. I was like, man, this beats any bar or on the 23rd floor looking out over the Waitemata Harbour, eh? And so that was probably the most I loved that part of my career was at that Māori law firm. But again, I guess that's culminating up to the point where in this area in Otara Papatoetoe, they were asking for people. I was a lot younger then than I am now, but asking people if they wanted to put their hand up, and I thought, okay, I have these skills to offer, and if the community thinks that's valuable to them as an elected member, then I put myself forward. And so I'm very grateful and lucky to have been elected twice into the Otara Papatoetoe local board, and I bring those skills and experience to that role.
And I'll hand over to Jar quickly, but just want to say thank you for telling us that small story, because that's the story of you on the train is not a story we would read in a bio or something, but it is a story that we can relate to. And I'm so happy that you can pass that through this korero. You know, like that is the learning, that we have to learn how to work our way through the world. And there's no answers sometimes that are easy. You just have to feel your way through. And I'm very fascinated that you are doing that. And it's what we hope our servants in the community have. And of course they do, but where are the places they can explain that to us apart from, things like that? Jar, over to you if you have a question.
What school did you go to?
So at the time we were living in Mangere East, so Papatoetoe North Primary School, and then that led on to Kitchley. So everyone there either went to Kitchley or Papatoetoe High, Papatoetoe Intermediate. And then my parents sent me to Auckland Grammar, so I had to go all the way into the city to do my education. So yeah, I try not to say that too much about the Auckland Grammar days, but that kind of opened a lot of doors, I must say. But at the same time, you could see the systemic and racial bias in schools like that as well. So I think my parents definitely had the best intentions of sending me to that school, but we probably also had to grit our teeth a lot of the time to get through schools like that.
Yeah, and I guess that's something too, like the networking that schools like grammar and that have is what people who don't go there don't see. But I also went to Auckland Grammar, right? So I can and I guess I'm half caste as well, so I can dip in and out of different worlds. But what I wish to be able to bring is these deep connections now that we can have via podcasts. It means we can open up those networks. The fact that Jar now knows you and we've spent time, you don't know where other doors are opened, but that's the amazing thing about what we can do here is to share that. I'm just going to sit on that point for a bit, because I guess, Reece, it's not that obvious what to do with that information, right? So you go through these systems and you talked about it before too with your experience as a lawyer. I guess, if you could change anything, would you? Or is that something that you're happy to have kind of been through these challenging experiences?
Yeah, I think that if the schools are the schools in South Auckland need to be well resourced and have really good teaching staff and teaching. I know a lot of my friends now will probably hate on me at the moment because they're all teachers in the South Auckland schools. But it's not all doom and gloom in South Auckland. Like if Macaulay is a standout school. Hey, you look at the NCA rates and they're awesome, and so there's a school that's doing well. It's not that the central schools are all good either. There are plenty of central schools that are probably on par with a lot of the South Auckland schools. So there's a perception. There's a perception that needs to be challenged. But there definitely needs to be more resources provided to our South Auckland schools, because our kids deserve it. And I think if that was the case, then my parents would be happy to have sent me to a South Auckland school. But at the time, My mother was a lecturer at Teachers Training College, and she probably had that access to the information about which schools did well in terms of, back then it was bursary, now it's NCA, and so she made that assessment based on what was provided at our local schools that we lived around compared to some of the outside schools. So at the time, my parents sent us there, but if I had daughters, then I would definitely consider sending them to Macaulay because they can prove that they are doing well. So it's nothing against South Auckland schools overall. It's the schools that can prove that they can make sure our kids do well academically, as well as other spheres as well, sporting, cultural, and so forth. So yeah, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the education system for South Auckland. But there are definitely schools out there that are doing well.
And I guess I'll hand over to Jar in a second, but I guess what I'm taking away as well is that's why you're in these positions of, leadership, is you can influence that, right? You can advocate, and it doesn't get swept under the rug. And that's actually the story that I like to remind myself, is that when we get to talk like this candidly, and maybe it's not so structured, but is it fair to say that that's what you do? You're out there making sure that our people are being represented, because that's what everyone's doing in all cultures, right? And, is that fair to say that?
Yeah, definitely. And it's about changing, like a lot of it is perception. So it's in any sphere of influence that we have as a council, we say, why aren't you using our local talent? There's these big contracts, and we ask them to support local businesses, and they just do the cleaners and the builders, and we're like, we've got architects as well, we've got people that engineers, so it's they don't think that we have that talent or people with that expertise in our area. So it is about changing their perception amongst those that hold those money bags or the decision making, saying we have those types of people in our South Auckland area. If you're going to build something in South Auckland, why don't you use our South Auckland talents as well?
That's right. Yeah, over to you, Joe.
Yeah, I'm going to go way off that subject. What was your vaccine experience like?
So my wife, she works at the border, and so a lot of the border workers had to be vaccinated earlier on, and including their household. So I actually got mine months ago, myself and my wife. My two sons, they can't get vaccinated, so it was pretty, I guess we were probably the earlier ones. Like everyone else, the general public hadn't had the invitation to be vaccinated, whereas my wife and I were. So everyone were kind of, they were kind of interested. And I put up a funny video. Just my kids I came home and I told my kids, I got vaccinated and there's a third eye. And they go, oh, what? Because I know my son had been looking up something about third eyes or something on YouTube. And so I knew he was interested. And they go, where is it, Dad? I go, it's usually on your forehead, but if you massage my shoulders, you can see it. It appears on the back of my head. And so they started massaging my shoulders, and I was like, they go like, Dad, I can't see it. I think you have to massage my arms. So they started massaging my arms, and then my wife kind of killed the buzz and said, nah, your dad's just playing with you. So I'm just trying to have fun with it, but nothing too serious. My second jab, I was a bit drowsy. A lot of people have said that the second jab, you kind of get those sort of symptoms, and it probably lasts for 24 hours, but otherwise it was fine. The jab was fine. I'm lucky enough to have a brother that went to med school. He's a doctor. His wife is also a doctor, and so we were able to get also that advice as well around the risks around the jabs. And so I guess we're fortunate in that way. But I'm a bit worried that a lot of our people don't have access, like I have, to a doctor to ask those questions and weigh up the risks and benefits of the vaccine. So it kind of feels like people are being forced to get the vaccine without having that opportunity to ask those questions. Whereas I'm very mindful that I was able to have that conversation with my brother at least.
Is there? Sorry, Jay, you go. Yep.
What do you think we could do better about the vaccines in Otara?
Yeah, and so I guess we had Super Saturday in the weekend across the country, and numbers were really good. But those sort of mainstream events, and it's publicized to the public at wide, they will bring in mainstream numbers. And that's what's reflected, is that a lot of the people that came in on Saturday already had their first jab and were getting the second jab, but only a small percentage were first jabs. So there's still a lot of people out there, about 20,000 people that haven't had any jabs, and that's a group that wasn't connected or wasn't convinced to get their jab on Saturday. And so that's the group that I guess authorities need to really work on. And these big campaigns and that will still have a role, but it probably doesn't have as big an impact on the group that we need to target on. And so that's what I've heard from the ministry and our DHB and other spheres, that there needs to be a more targeted approach. And I know Swanee, many people know Swanee, and she's been advocating for the same thing, that these big vaccination, yep, that's fine, but actually where's our street level, door-to-door conversations about people having that opportunity to ask questions about the vaccine, because although I know a lot of people want to open up before Christmas, but the more we talk about mandatory and forcing vaccines on people, the more we're going to shut the door on people actually having that opportunity to ask questions. So I'm really supportive of things like this podcast, or this opportunity to have a Talanoa. This is where we can actually say, hey, we need to pivot. We need to start looking at a different way of doing things, get our Māori and Pacific providers, health providers in there, the marae, our schools, the people that are in the local areas to engage with our families and let them ask their questions, air out their questions. I mentioned my brother, he's a GP at Otara Christian Healthcare, and he's put on a few Q&A sessions on Zoom, and a few people, I guess, have had that chance to ask that question on the Zoom level. But again, I think it probably needs to get even more intimate beyond just Zoom. It might have to be door to door or at a street level to because not everyone's on Zoom and not everyone's going to watch a Q&A session. So I guess that's where we're heading towards. But all these different avenues of trying to connect with our communities at that more intimate level has to happen.
Reece, when we kind of go a little bit third person or a bit wider view, a picture emerges for me about people needing information, about us being able to have trusted sources, not just telling us what to do, but spending time with us so we can make decisions based on like we always have, information, and we can know the outcome. Is this revealing that we probably need to do a bit more work in that space, not just COVID related, but the fact that, mum had to send you to grandma so that you opened up a different world? Like, I guess I got two questions. One is, what can be done, and are we enacting that right now? I believe so that we are. And two, I guess whilst we go through the transition, what still gives you hope? Like, I have a lot of hope, and it's tough and whatnot, but I still trust that we'll arrive together. So I guess my first question, what can be done a little bit to open up those discussions? Is it like what you're saying about maybe it's door to door and things like that?
Yes, I think there's that macro level, where we have that the big public promotions and so forth. And then there's that micro level relationships, as you say, and I've mentioned in terms of street level, in terms of door to door, but even more granular than that is our family units. And I guess an example that I can bring in terms of this current outbreak is my own extended family. There's about 50 of them that attend Ranui Samoan AOG Church, and they were part of the Samoan cluster. And of that, about 50 members, about 12 of them were positive over a few weeks. They became positive. And so all of them went either into MIQ or had some time in hospital before coming to MIQ. Thankfully, they're all now out. So most of the Samoan AOG cluster, most of those people are now back at home. But what happened for my extended family was that it was earlier on when the numbers started blowing up, and my great aunt, she was on the news, and she was saying, "I've been waiting 4 days for people to come and pick up the people that are positive in my house." And so there would seem to be a bit of a bottleneck. There weren't enough MIQ rooms for this growing number of positive cases from the Samoan cluster. They had just discovered there was a outbreak in that church at the time. But that was worrying those people that were living in the same household with positive cases. They can't self-isolate. They all use the same toilets, the same bathrooms. We don't have 2 bathrooms or 2 toilets in our houses. And so there was a real risk that it was going to spread if those people weren't taken to MIQ early. And when our family, so they were out in Ranui, and when my family out south saw that on the news, there was that alarm bell started ringing, and we actually called a meeting on Zoom with our family, and we said, okay, we've seen Auntie's told us that we need to come together as a family. How do we draw on our different strengths and experiences to try and help our family? And so as the experience went through MIQ and hospital, there were definitely shortfalls in the experiences, and a lot of people at the MIQ or in hospital, and we were able to connect with people within the hospital system, within the health system, to try and rectify those. And so I think that's the strength of coming together as a family. Those of us outside of MIQ, helping those that are inside of MIQ, things like getting food that our older people eat in the MIQ. Those are things that might be overseen by people that administer a general populace MIQ. But if there are growing numbers of elderly Samoans that are going to be in MIQ, they're not going to eat lasagna. They're not going to eat pasta. So those small things go a long way. Not only just a menu type, but in terms of recovery for those older people, if they would eat the food that they are used to, healthy food, taro and stuff like that, but that will go a long way to help with their recovery. But even water, explaining things like bottled water. So I'm sure many people have seen on the news that at the time that people were complaining that they had to purchase their own water, which is exactly the experience that my family went through. And maybe many of our families haven't been to these hotels where there's only one tap. The tap is right next to the toilet, and that's where you get your water from. And so there's maybe that wasn't explained. That definitely wasn't explained to my family, and they were a bit shocked that they were told to put that they had to pay for their bottles when they were forced to go into MIQ. And so those sort of things were eventually the health authorities, the different groups were able to help our families and get over those sort of things. But that information sharing was lacking, and especially for people first going into the system. And so one of the young people, he's a deputy head boy at MAGS. He was positive and went into MIQ. He started drawing up cartoons and all in Samoan, and explaining the experience of having COVID symptoms and what to expect in the MIQ centre and so forth, and started distributing that amongst the church and wider community so that they could see, because we saw there was a gap, and he filled it with his own talent of him and his friends doing those cartoons. And so there's a saying in Samoan, e whafo le alamea, and it means the alamea is a spiky starfish, and if you stand on it, those spikes inject poison into you. But if you flip the starfish over on its back and put the infected area on the back of that starfish, it sucks that poison back out. And so the saying means that the starfish can solve its own problems, but that refers to our own communities and our own families, that we have the solutions to our own problems. And that was really very much illustrated in how our extended family dealt with the MIQ experience. And so I guess that's how we can replicate that across without having to depend on these big public promotions, which has a role, but actually the building blocks of our communities are within our families. So if we can build our communities, if we can resource our communities, if we can resource those community groups that work with our families to strengthen them, then they can overcome anything. They can overcome this crisis. They can overcome any other crisis that might come before us. And that's probably reveals our resilience. That's when people say, "Oh, our community is so resilient." It's because we come together in those times of need, and we have those relationships with our families that say, "Hey, the authorities aren't providing us, or there's information lacking. How do we come as a community to deal with that?" So I guess that's one way we've been doing it with our extended family. We also do Zooms. We do games nights. I know we can't mix and mingle physically, but we have games night. And my brother, the doctor, he sends a message to the adults saying, "Oh, hey, if you guys have any questions about the vaccine, there's a time now while your kids are playing. You can ask the questions privately offline in another area."
Awesome.
So just trying to find those opportunities within our families, connected in that way, to keep ourselves strengthened.
Beautiful. Well, I think you answered my second question, which is what gives you hope. It sounds very hopeful as well, and that the resilience comes from us keeping together. Jar, did you have any final question?
Do you have a message you want to send to our community?
Yeah, I guess it's on one hand, those of us that are already vaccinated and are pro-vax and everything, I guess we really need to come with compassion and be mindful and open about where people are in their lives. So those that aren't vaccinated, we coming down hard and saying, "Oh, you're bad, you're not vaccinated," that's not going to bring up our people together. And so we really need to actually sit down and talk to our families and say, what are the issues? Is there anything I can help out with? Is it actually job security? Is it about thinking about provision of food for my family in the next month or so? Am I still going to have a house to live in because I can't afford to pay the rent? Maybe there are those issues that are also playing in people's minds that therefore cuts them off from considering whether they should get vaccinated or not. So there's a multiple of reasons, and there are a whole lot of people that have health reasons as well. So maybe we need to connect them up to a trusted health source that can provide that information that's away from all the noise that we get if we just listen to Instagram or YouTube. And so that's probably my encouragement is for those of us that are vaccinated, that we don't start turning into the big bad teacher or the trying to whip people into line. That's not going to solve our issues. But those that aren't vaccinated, then please reach out to your family. Those that are out there that might have connections to those answers that you seek, please seek from trusted sources. There's plenty of information out there. We just have to choose the right ones.
Awesome. Look, Reece, we just want to thank you for enacting everything you talked about today. You came in to chat with us, and we didn't know the full path, but I like the idea that we arrived all together. That's all we had. Trust today that we'd try and have this Talanoa, and I believe that is a small example of what can happen on a wider scale too. So on behalf of us at Southside Korero, thank you, brother, for taking time for us.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, and I really appreciate the opportunity, as you say, just to share. But there's so many other stories out there that I'd love to ensure that our community hears well. Thank you.